I mean, if we're going to be honest, every major medical organization supports gender-affirming care for trans youth. They say
absolutely
it's
do.
safe and it's life-saving.
Alright, welcome back to the channel today, everybody. Me and Arielle are here in this beautiful cabin in North Georgia this weekend. And so we decided we're going to react to Jubilee's latest panel where they have Detrans versus trans. Now, I haven't watched this. Have you watched this yet?
I've watched like 30 seconds of it, only because I know that you were supposed to be in this video, and we just like couldn't make it work because we were, you know.
We were doing our thing.
But yeah, I'm extra curious to see what these people have to say, because I know two of the people on this panel. So do you.
Let's get into it.
Raise your hand if you feel attacked by the opposite side.
By both sides.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. Gender-related treatment should be banned for minors. I repeat, gender-related treatment should be banned for minors.
Medical transition is no place for a child. I transition as an adult, and I have medical complications. I have mental health issues. Child cannot consent to a medical transition.
So, the biggest thing about this is none of the trans people on this panel stepped forward. So,
and you would have been the one who did.
It's already setting the tone for how this is going to play out.
And for those of you who are watching this who don't know who the person speaking is, Shapeshifter, I had him in a number of videos of mine. I think you had him in a video as well.
So I did a video on Shapeshifter's YouTube channel, and I'll put a link up to that here, because Shapes is an awesome person and doing a really great job speaking out.
I kind of agree with you on that as well, because you can't even, rent a motel until you're like 25. There's some specific things that we need to put into place that I think would help protect our children.
I did transition as a minor. I was a teenager who had a lot of mental health issues and had been sexually exploited and hated my body.
I've made a number of videos speaking on this topic, and I've had a number of I had you in the number of videos that I've done about this, and this is a common theme: young women being sexually exploited, sexually manipulated, sexually abused, and hating their bodies and confusing, even having body dysmorphia, which is not sexual abuse, obviously, but confusing these or conflating these with having gender dysphoria.
I met Luca in Wisconsin, and that answer goes to show, and you're absolutely right. There's two things. There's a lot of things that we hear from a lot of these children detransitioners, and a lot of it, there is the sexual exploitation that they feel, and people say when they're like sexually assaulted and stuff like that, they just want to wash it off. They just want to change who they are, and it makes them feel,
like
bad about
way out.
themselves. It's almost, they blame themselves for what happened, and so then they want to change their body. And a lot of young people right now are being manipulated because of issues that they've had. And
it ended with me kind of finding spaces where that was twisted into, no, you're just a boy in the wrong body. And it ended with me having my first ever medical intervention being a double mastectomy at 16, before any hormones, before anything else. And because of transitioning at such a young age, in the past 6 months, I have watched my body fall apart and waste away in front of me. I have constant joint pain. I've watched my muscle mass waste away.
I wonder if, after hearing this, the trans people who are for gender surgery and gender treatment for minors, after hearing this being right in front of their face, literally people saying, I messed up, I made a mistake. I wonder if the trans people that are waiting in the back over there would come and sit down. I know that I filmed the Jubilee video, so I know that's not how they do it, but I wonder what they're gonna say when they do come and sit down.
The evidence we have suggests that the best way to figure out if gender dysphoria persists into adulthood is to let them grow up. Because a lot of these kids will grow out of it, and many of them will just grow up and end up being gay or gender nonconforming.
Yep.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
I mean, if we're going to be honest, every major medical organization supports gender-affirming care for trans youth. They say
absolutely
it's
do.
safe and it's life-saving.
The face of disagreement.
That is not true. Every other country in the world is starting to reverse course on this. England, the Netherlands, even New Zealand last year took it off of their website that puberty blockers were fully reversible. They took it off their website last year. And so the NICE, I forget what it stands for, in the UK said that they are showing, like, the reason why they closed the Tavistock clinic is because they are showing that there was not evidence that it was beneficial for
kids.
And there are numerous studies that back that up.
The study that backs it up for puberty blockers is the Dutch protocol, and the same
I have
scientists.
10 studies that I can bring to you
The
right
same
now.
scientists that brought that up have since rolled it back and said it was never supposed to be applied the way it has. The American medical industry, we all know, is money hungry and has gone off the rails.
I do agree that there are definitely some doctors out there that may be taking advantage of trans people, and I'm sorry that you went through this. Truly, I really am sorry.
Good for you, Samantha.
But trans kids are valid, and it's not a decision that they're making.
Right.
It's healthcare.
The issue is two things can be true at once. While there are very, very few kids that are actually experiencing gender dysphoria, that it actually won't go away, and that this treatment would actually be beneficial to them, the majority of kids grow out of it. Or not even grow out of it. The majority of kids are not experiencing actual gender dysphoria.
I came out 13 years ago when I was 14, and I knew not that I was trans, but that I was a boy. I had to go through a lengthy process of therapy and seeing an endocrinologist and like go through different tests and exams to make sure that this was real to everyone else involved.
But that's not what's happening anymore.
Right.
So what's happening now is you're going in one visit and you're getting placed on blockers in that first visit. I mean, we've heard the stories time and time again that they are just pushing through. The whistleblower in St. Louis, Jamie Reed talked about how if a therapist wouldn't affirm and wouldn't, say that they were
They were threatened to be fired, right?
Well, it wasn't even that. No. The hospital would actually help them get a therapist that would
affirm them.
As a father, I have 4 kids, and so, and also as a trans person, I think that knowing what it looked like for me as a child, and that experience of going through all of the turmoil and all of the trepidation around my gender identity, I would not put my children in that situation. And also, I don't think that surgeries should be allowed for minors. Like, when we look at the data and we look at the statistics and we look at the research,
forward, right?
Yeah, he didn't step forward and say that. So he's saying it's okay for your kid, but not his kid.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, let me hear what.
vast majority of these surgeries are happening to adults. They're not minors. So let's start there, right? And then further than that, if we look at puberty blockers are reversible. So when it comes to children, when we talk about puberty blockers, that gives them a shot.
Yeah.
And it gives them autonomy over their bodies. It gives them a space that they can explore their expression. They can explore who they are without surgeries, without all of these other things that could have permanent effects.
But we've done videos on this before as well. Puberty blockers can, and a lot of the times do, have permanent effects as well.
Especially, they are especially harmful if you go on to cross-sex hormones, because they will.
It's a gateway drug, pun intended.
It is. I mean, because 98% of the people that go on puberty blockers end up transitioning.
Right.
And it's the sunk cost fallacy.
Right.
And it pushes you forward. On top of, brain developmental issues, bone density issues, and everything else that I've highlighted in other videos before.
But how do you know that this kid is not going to change their gender expression later on? We really actually don't have studies on children that are taken over long term, like over 10 years, 20 years. You've only been on testosterone 14 years. One of the oldest trans men, Buck Angel, he almost died from testosterone. You're saying right now it saved your life, you may still die from it, you don't know.
Social media brainwashes teens to believe that they're trans.
I have to agree on that one. Like, there's this thing about it.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's this play that they have.
I don't think that it necessarily brainwashes children, but I think there are a lot of people who get into being queer or trans because it's trendy. And I know that's a really controversial statement to make as a trans person, but I have seen it.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Honestly, good for him. Even though credit where credit's due, he's right. He's right.
And I also find that social media, especially apps like TikTok, give a lot of these kids so much misinformation and lead to people thinking they're trans when there are much deeper issues. And everyone just wants to belong and find an identity, especially when they're young.
Which is why we are against kids transitioning. It's because they're getting confused and they're thinking they're trans when it's something else, or there are much deeper issues, or there's childhood trauma or sexual trauma, or body dysmorphia, or anxiety, depression, all these other issues. He's proving our point, which
on the first
good for
first
him.
case. Yeah, he's saying like this could be trendy, and if you know that all these people are coming out because it's trendy, and then they're 90%, how many of them are going straight onto medicalization?
Right.
That's an issue. That is a huge issue.
That's why I hesitated to step forward.
And that's why I would step in and actually say it's more so of like a social contagion.
Just, yeah.
What got me to transition in the first place was social media. It had a grasp on me that there could be something else out in the world for me.
Right.
Look at Reddit. Reddit is a cesspool for, trans. Like, if you go into any of those things, it's all what we call hug boxing, where you just continuously get bombarded with validation and all this other stuff, and they push you. And if you ever even disagree that somebody might not be trans, you get
bullied
banned.
off the site or whatever.
You get banned like
from
I did.
the site.
Good for him, actually, for recognizing that fact.
I have a question for Samantha, since you have the largest platform here. Do you believe over the years you've inspired people to transition?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that I've inspired people to believe that it's okay to be transgender, it's okay to express themselves, and that it's possible to live a happy and successful life.
How do you feel about the fact that some of them are going to regret the body modifications they got and going to have
I think that they should go to a doctor that is well-versed in gender care and have the appropriate psychoanalytic analysis done beforehand.
And that's the issue, is that these psychoanalyses aren't being done, and even if they are, there are still a good number of people who are still regretting transition. Again, two things can be true at once.
But somebody
like Samantha can be happy with their transition. Somebody like you can be happy. Somebody like Buck, somebody like Shape, no.
Yeah, and here's the thing is, she doesn't get when they say you have influenced somebody to be trans. They're not saying that she makes it seem like, yes, I've normalized it, which is a good thing. I mean, it's a positive thing to be like, okay, we've normalized this, it's not shameful to be trans and all this.
Right.
But she's probably also, what they're trying to get at is she's probably also influenced people
that
to
aren't
actually transition because it's something cool.
That don't have gender dysphoria.
Exactly.
Agree.
People with gender dysphoria need therapy, not surgery.
It's potentially both, though. Yes. I think everyone with gender dysphoria needs to go through a therapeutic process and mental health care before they make that choice for themselves.
Exactly.
Yes, because, and it should be years of therapy. Like, I think I've talked about my story. It took me 5 years of actually research and finding myself. I didn't go completely through therapy those 5 years, but it was me exploring myself. But I think I'm self-aware enough to be able to know what's right for myself. I was also in my mid-20s when I started going through this process, even though it was something that I had felt my entire life.
Right.
I personally confused a lot of my gender dysphoria for body dysmorphia, because no matter how much I feminize my body, till today I still don't feel comfortable in my own body. And now, looking among members of trans community, I see that people keep on getting more and more surgeries. The surgeries are no longer affirming. You can just tell that this person is struggling with body images.
So one thing that I've heard a lot more lately, coming from detransitioners, one detransitioner that I know, she was a cutter before she went into this body modification stuff. She had a rough childhood, went into cutting and all of that. And so for her, the surgeries were actually more of the doctors were creating this self-harm on her, and actually she was getting celebrated for the self-harm she was causing. And then she detransitioned, understanding that that was the case with her.
Ooh. don't know the level of deep.
Yeah.
I do believe that transition was sold to me as a hardware fix for my mental issues that were not addressed. I still struggle with internalized homophobia that pushed me into transition in the first place. I struggle with borderline personality disorder, body dysmorphia, I'm on the spectrum, I'm ADHD, and I have all these issues that were not helped, and I was still struggling with them after transition, and I still do. Overall, after a few years, I came to a conclusion that I was not in the wrong body, that I'm a gender non-conforming man, and I am a feminine man, that's what I am.
Do you know the difference between gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
So it's basically...
It's the opposite.
Yeah, they're basically the opposite concepts.
Gender dysphoria is looking in the mirror and seeing something that is there that you don't like or that you don't relate to, and body dysmorphia is seeing something that is not there that you think is there.
Right, and a lot of times they overlap, like Shapeshifter just talked about.
Right.
They do overlap because, but that's kind of what leads a lot of trans people down these roads of multiple surgeries upon surgeries upon surgeries, is that they see something in the mirror that they absolutely don't like, and they're continuously, it's a continuous pursuit of perfection.
Right.
You're never, and it's the same with not even just anybody that has to do with gender. I mean, we see this a lot with celebrities and women and a lot of different stuff where plastic surgery becomes addictive.
Right.
And that's kind of you see a lot of trans people fall into this addiction because they do end up having eating disorders, they have a lot of stuff, and so they start seeing stuff that's not actually in the mirror because they oversee what makes them male. And it's not actually there. Some of these people pass 100%, and you would never know that they were trans, but they still have in their brain they're seeing something that's not there. So there is some overlap between
of course,
the two.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I've had a lot of binary trans people say that it's not a mental health issue. Like, if you're trans, and I know I don't agree with that. Like, I think there's a disconnect between the mind and the body. I guess I'm asking that. Like, do you think that it's a mental health disorder? And
I don't think being
therapy?
transgender is a mental health
disorder?
disorder. I think, gender incongruence is what they're referring to it as now. It's listed as a sexual health concern. But the gender dysphoria, which is the symptom that arises when you are transgender, is a mental health concern. So if you do have gender dysphoria, the only treatment for that is transition. Right. Whether that be just a social transition, a medical transition, whatever transition fits you, that is the only way to heal your gender dysphoria.
You can't heal your gender dysphoria. There is no cure. That's the problem with that statement. Gender dysphoria is something that a lot of people have faced. I know, again, there's other detransitioners that I know that have talked about the fact that they still have gender dysphoria, but transitioning did not help them.
But yeah, I have one friend that that is actually transgender, meaning they have gender dysphoria, but transition made them feel worse. I have one friend that's like that.
The LGBTQ plus community is not as accepting as they claim.
When I was transitioning in high school, I searched for acceptance from the cis hetero world. And now I feel like I'm doing the opposite and searching for acceptance from my own community half the time. Like when I was in college, the queer community on my campus hated me because I did like heteronormative like guy stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. I was like, where is he going with this? There it is. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What he's talking about is the fact that he's a trans guy that wants to be stealth, that wants to be seen as a man, isn't gender non-conforming, it very much wants to integrate himself into society as a man, and maybe not be seen as trans all the time, and the trans community will hate him for that. The truth is that the trans activists, rather, will hate him for that.
Yeah, and that's what I think about this prompt is I'm going to expect that we're going to see a lot of disagreements on what this actually means, because there is a lot of hate coming to trans people from the LGB, like the LGB without the T, but a lot of that hate is because of the Q. I think the Q has co-opted so much of the T that now it's actually making they're pulling the T and making us look bad, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that when they changed it from transsexual, and everybody on this panel are transsexual. Right. When they changed it from transsexual to transgender and included non-binary, that's when so much of the Q aspect, the postmodern aspect of the non-binary started to infiltrate the LGB and T.
Yep.
Every time I would go to the LGBT club meetings, I would get like they would stare into my soul. Like I was just this awful thing, and it's always just made me feel invisible and small.
Because I did notice that when I was still living as a trans man, when I passed really well, all of a sudden it was like I wasn't welcome in these spaces anymore until they knew, and then you get that icky feeling of like you only want me here because of that. And now I have the detrans aspect where no community wants me. No one. Like I'm still part of the I'm part of the LGB part, but I've lost people that I thought they liked me for me, and it didn't matter what I was.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, detransitioning was the thing that I've been called a traitor.
Yeah, me too.
It's
Me too.
They don't want me. The rest of the world doesn't want me.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is one of the most powerful things I think I've ever heard, and everybody feels exactly what she's saying. That makes me sad, because I know, like I said, I know Luca. Luca's a wonderful person. And to hear her say that nobody wants me, that makes me tear.
It's not true, but I don't blame her for thinking that, because it does feel that way. Yeah, there's hate from like 3 or 4 different directions, and it's a shit show right now. It's sad.
It is, and that's why I think we need to embrace people, and I think that's what I think this does, and this is why their Jubilee is doing middle ground episodes like this, is because there's always something, and there's always some common ground to find there. I mean, that alone, to a lot of activists, and we're constantly online, and we're always doing this stuff. Even seeing somebody, I mean, the look that Samantha gave was, you could tell she was emotionally affected by that.
Yeah.
Which, if she was making videos online and she was just seeing Luca online, she wouldn't have ever felt that. If she read that on Twitter, she would have never had those same emotions.
Right.
And so I think that's actually, like I said, I think that's one of the most powerful things I've seen online in a really long time. All right, y'all. So, again, very good. I think it was really good. Well done, well put together. I didn't think I was going to really like it as much as I did. I think there was a lot of good points that were made. But, Arielle, where can everybody go find you?
YouTube.com/Arielle.
I'll put her links in the description below. And click that like and subscribe button. Follow me across all social media platforms. Go support our sponsors. And I will see you next time.